All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Consequence of Habit podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with a gentleman I probably started talking with probably about 6 months ago, who I've got some connections with, which I didn't even really know about until just recently. So, podcast, Monty Bynum.
Thank you, JT. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
Yeah. So Monty, I know we spoke a while back. I totally forgot so where I live, I'm in Bear, Delaware, which is an area that you know very well. I completely forgot that you were in Newcastle
That's
County.
right. I grew up. I'm born and raised in Delaware, and I was that was my second cop job, believe it or not. Actually, my first was Ocean City, Maryland, but that's my hometown.
Monty, after listening to some of your other podcasts, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a place you weren't a cop.
That could be a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I imagine you moved around a lot of 401ks throughout the years. You bounced around. So a couple of reasons I'm interested in having you on here, Monty. When it comes to habits, right? That's kind of this all-inclusive thing. We're going to talk about habits as they relate to entrepreneurship, as they relate into coaching others, into service, right? Service to others, to the community. And so with that said, I really want you to be able to represent what you've done. I think you'll do it much accurately than I would. So you've already mentioned that, hey, I was a police officer, my first one, Ocean City, Maryland, correct?
Right. Exactly. I started.
Yeah. So you bounced around a little bit. And how many years were you a police officer? Because this is the reverse order I'm used to hearing. Until you went into the Marine Corps.
So I was a police officer for 4 years. And I don't know if Gene or anybody else ever told you, or maybe I'm a really old dog. So what no one tells you is they had a atrocious schedule. 7 days on, 1 day off, 7 days on, 2 days off, 7 days on, 3 days off. But it would rotate from day to evenings to morning watch. So when I joined,
that's
it was totally. When I joined, I was less than 20 credits from graduating with my bachelor's. I couldn't get it done, so I had to quit to finish my bachelor's, and then I decided, do I want to go back to Newcastle, or do I want to? I always aspired to join the military, and went through OCS and joined the Marine Corps, and was honored to be commissioned an officer.
So, and what year was that?
That was 1999. Yeah, like I said, old dog.
Okay. All right. No, listen. You saw me pull these reading glasses off, man. I'm turning 49.
Wow.
Literally next
man, you look great.
Next week.
You look fantastic, dude. Getting it done. Love it.
Oh, it's filters. Yeah, it's just filters. Don't be. But yes, but to be honest with you, my eyes, like in the last 6 months, I feel like if I stay on this track,
brother, I was looking at the TV the other day, and I was like, I couldn't. I've got to go back. It's so sad. So
yeah. All right. So you spend 4 years as a police officer. You go in the Marine Corps. You spend your time in the Marines. You get back out, and stop me, because I'm going to summarize this, because I'm more excited about getting into what you're doing now and your thoughts around habit. You end up down in the Alpharetta area of Georgia.
Yeah. So that's where I landed. I guess my family, while I was in the Marine Corps, we were all from Delaware, and while I'm in the Marine Corps, traveling around, seeing pleasant people in the world, everyone moved from Delaware into Georgia, and that's where they landed in Alpharetta. I had applied to the FBI. This is right during 9/11, and was waiting to get picked up. And said, okay, let me hang out here for a while I wait to go to the academy. So,
all right. So, how many years altogether? And when I say service, I mean both your military and as a law enforcement officer.
Yeah. So 32 years total. Yeah,
32 years.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Yeah, it's when it's put out there, right? I mean, I don't.
I remember being in the academy, and they got the senior guy come in, and like, I'm going to tell you, well, you should just appreciate all the time because it's going to go by really fast. And sure enough, crap.
Yeah, and but the 21-year-old's like,
Right,
shut the fuck up,
right,
like
right,
whatever,
right.
like no idea what you're
Yeah.
talking. I've been in this academy and it feels like I've been here for 3 years, so you have no. But at the end of the day, they're right. um, so I've been in some form of public service my
Yeah.
entire adult life, and I've had friends in the private sector who have done very
Mhm.
well for themselves, and I used to say to them, I'm never going to be rich, but I always know where my paycheck's coming
Ooh,
from, right?
wow.
And yeah, and because in my mind, you're almost sacrificing one for the other.
Hmm.
And I'm, full transparency, I realized
Right,
how wrong I was, but but that's what I
right,
saw around me. I mean, I saw some failed businesses, right? I saw
right.
people try and do something and it not work out. So it was more that it was not, you could you're not risk adverse at work,
Hmm.
but you were risk adverse when it came to financial stability, right?
So yeah,
But
right,
you,
right.
in
But
my
really,
mind,
it's not really that. But it's really risk averse to anything we don't know. We master some of the most difficult challenges. That's just it. We just convince ourselves that we're not good at that. What's funny is if the director came down and said, "JT, hey brother, I need you to run the range. I need you to put together, you know, warrant service. I need you also to do a roundup. I also need you to manage the budget for the range, talk to the community, all these things." We would get it done. We would handle it with no problem.
yeah,
But it's just that we're not familiar. We didn't have the training. If we being an entrepreneur was trained in the academy, we'd be on it because we are so good
yeah,
at being creative problem solvers. That's the biggest thing. We just didn't train. You talk about consequences of habit. We did not train our minds to think that way, to think expansively. Like, but we do on the job. Like, okay, we could take this guy down and possibly get a shootout, or how can we get this guy without? This is not the movies. This is not TV.
sure,
I want to go home. How can we get this guy in cuffs without making a big scene?
yeah, and I mean, it's a bit of teaser to later in the conversation because we're going to talk about just that, right? We're going to talk about
Yeah.
the process of entrepreneurship, both where you've failed
Ooh.
and where you've
Yeah.
succeeded, and how you take those
Right.
failures, right? And literally, I just had this conversation with my son yesterday. We're talking about
Mm.
mentorship and looking for mentorship in others, and really using other people's mistakes um, as examples of what not to do, and then also the positive things they've done. Like, why make mistakes other people have
Wow.
already made?
That's so gold. I wish
And
you
then
had a. I
on
wish
the
you
other
had
side of
a
that,
gong or a bell or something. That was gold. That's so gold. We're so trained on like we will
yeah,
handle it. JT, here's the issue. You handle it. But you just said it right there. That's the secret to success. Is like who knows? I mean, that's why we read books, right? We get the shortcuts,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. And the other thing is, my son and I. This is going back about 2 weeks, and we were talking about he's at a age in his life where he's trying to figure out, hey, what am I going to do? He's
yeah.
16, and we're talking about trade schools, we're talking about college, we're talking about different things. And I'll start throwing out some ideas, right? And I'll say, hey, what about this? What about this? Have you thought about doing this? And he says, that's a good idea. Why didn't you do something like that? And Monty, but I was dead. I was completely honest. I said I didn't think
Wow.
I could. My ceiling was
Wow.
too low,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
meant it, right? Because I've heard you talk about, you're a strong C student,
If
right?
thanks
And I
for
was,
because that was generous. I barely 2.01
uh,
barely graduated and had to beg to get into my master's program. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Monty. I had teachers in high school tell me I wasn't going to get through it. So, I mean it. I mean, like they said, there's no way you're graduating.
Can we call you a
And
ride?
shoving it
Is
in
there
your
is there maybe somewhere we
right,
could
right.
drop you off? I mean, because this is not cutting it. Have you considered being a clown? Maybe that they pay well. They
Yeah,
feed you elephants.
and this is high school. This is high school. rubbing it in their face, it should, you should be doing more than walking across the stage of high school to
Right.
really show them. Like, so, and I honestly, I thought that I wasn't capable of these things, and my ceiling was
No,
way
no,
too
you're
low.
right,
Now,
man.
my views on yeah, my views of
Yeah.
on this have
It's
changed
the things that we
radically.
talk about, right? It's
Um,
it's it's what we're telling, that it's really the conversations we're having with ourselves, and we set it up. I remember having such stage. I don't know about you, but I feared I feared having to read in front of the class. I hated that.
sure.
So
Yeah,
I had
yeah,
a condition that I would kind of mix up numbers and go out of, or mix up letters and everything. It wasn't quite dyslexia, and it was also, it would get more pronounced with anxiety. Which, so
sure.
I would actually
Yeah, right.
count how many people were, to it was my turn, and then
Same,
start memorizing the phrase, the passage. You
same.
know,
Yeah. And if I
yes,
skip somebody, I was like, "You son of a bitch!" Like I had this like
right,
ready to go, and you're
yep,
going to do
yep.
that to me.
And I told
Uh,
myself I wasn't,
it,
but then my mother, my father, and my stepfather were all teachers, so limiting beliefs were not
oh,
acceptable. It's
that's
just a
true.
matter. My mother's like, no, that's, you just have to figure out what works for you as far as learning. And I would get very frustrated, until later in college. I
Yeah,
actually did. She was right. I totally unlocked the key. Yeah,
yeah. I had somebody. I know that's not even true. I was listening to somebody, and they said, education is picture is it's based general education on a Windows
mm.
operating system, but there's kids out there that
Oh
run on a
wow,
Mac.
that's great.
Like it's things. Yeah, things just
Right.
don't come the same way. That it doesn't
Yep.
operate the same. That doesn't mean
Yep.
it's lesser than. And that was yeah. Because I mean, I'm gonna guess like you, there were certain aspects of learning or a sign of intelligence that came to you naturally, but there were other ones that I'm like, how the
Right.
fuck
One
do
hundred
these
percent.
guys all get it so easy?
Yeah.
And I'm struggling with this thing. But all right, so I want to back up because we're completely missing what you're even on
No,
here
I'm
for in
with
the
you.
first place. You spend all this time as a public servant in what
Mhm.
a lot of different capacities. Uh, but during that time, unlike me, you thought, all right, yes, I'm doing this job. That doesn't mean that I don't need to have these other forms of
Right.
cash flow coming in. Uh, maybe bring it back to what like that
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
process, and then actually executing on something. And I don't care if it wins,
Uh-huh.
fails, doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
just the courage to be able to do that. Like
Man, that's
where did
great.
that kind of come from?
What gave you the courage? That's so, and I thought it was just, I thought it was loaded in there because I didn't realize that it wasn't. And one of the things that gave me the courage was I didn't have a limiting belief about that. I told my mother, early on, Mom, I want to do two things. I want to be wealthy, and I want to protect uh, folks, and be in law enforcement. And she didn't, she said, yeah, it's totally possible. You just have to figure out what works for you, and how. I never realized how powerful that was. When later I would talk to, a couple of my friends, and they said, my parents said I either had to do the military or I had to, be a business person. You couldn't. There was no way. You had to pick a lane, and I didn't have that limiting belief. So that was really, really, powerful.
Yeah, sometimes it just that ignorance is
Yeah.
exactly what you need, right? Because even in my mind, those they are certainly not conducive of another. Like you say, hey, I'm doing this. I don't know. They just don't seem to fit together. But
Right.
but
Right.
obviously they
I
do.
had I was set down that journey like it was possible. I thought all things were possible. My mom would do things. It- you know, I remember going to the corner store, and I saw this magazine, and it was all about being an entrepreneur. I'm 17, 18, and I get this magazine. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I just need to go to New York. And she's like, yeah, go ahead, go with your cousin. And we go up to New York, and it was just the fact that I was willing to step out, and she supported me. That's all she wanted. She knew it wasn't gonna. She knew it was like silly, but she didn't.
Yeah.
She didn't step on that. It was pretty powerful. Flash forward to now, I'm a police officer, and I happened to be riding with one of the most amazing, FTOs. He literally was like the epitome of Superman. It was just, I mean, he was stronger, faster, smarter, nicer than anybody else. And everybody looked up to him. And he's just like, hey, I hope this is not your only income. You need to, you know, consider having an additional income that you controlled. I listened to him. Guy ended up leaving 5 years later and having this amazing real estate in business. Back in the day when that was not even a thing. I mean, he was so far advanced when it came
Yeah.
to that. And I just took that. I just didn't know back then the difference between a side hustle and a business. Later in life, I got coaches and that helped me and pointed that out. But I just did side stupid jobs and different little things. So
Well, we'll break that down. What is the
nice,
difference between a
nice,
side
yeah,
hustle and a
yeah.
business?
So uh, a business truly is all about leverage. And if we're
I
doing
like that.
everything, and this should resonate with everybody, and this is what we teach. We're always trying to get you to go from operator. That's what we generally are as first responders. We have a task. We take care of the task to owner, and I call that AKA boss thinking. Who can do this job? And most likely, in my case, a lot of people can do that job a lot better than me, and that's all about leverage. Not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and so I'm okay with that. My job is just to recruit the best and supply them with all the resources they need and take care of them. And that's really the difference. That allows you to kind of think and scale and really utilize leverage. Otherwise, it's just a job. That's all. We just traded one job for another. If we're doing all the work, despite
Yeah.
so
So, so you run a company called the Wealthy Servant, right? So break that down. How does that work? Like, what is the
yeah, yeah. So
criteria?
what I
And I
yeah,
think
so
it's
what I saw, over the years, I, I, I had business, I had real estate, I had, man, I had a lot. I had a party bus, I had a restaurant, a bar, a marketing company, and another training company previously, and eventually I ended up with a coach and a couple mentors that helped me transition to owning businesses, actually being the boss. As I'm leaving, probably what you've seen too is as these guys leave, they don't generally now leave to go retire and just truly be happy. They most of, at least in my experience, most of the guys were leaving because they had another job, and that kind of disgusted me. I mean, like, God, that sucks. After 30 years or 20 years of putting up all the things that we missed, all the late nights, all that, all the stress, they're going now for another job. And I just thought there's got to be some resource for these guys. And as I'm leaving, my fiance is like, I she's like, you got to do something. You got to be able to help these guys, those that have committed to actually doing a business and creating income. You got to help them and show how they can do it correctly, how they can actually, you know, truly monetize it, how they can put systems in place, systematize their their side hustle. It could be something they truly do on the side. But if we have systems in place and we're using leverage and we're putting in sales processes and marketing, all that stuff, truly, then that really makes it into a business. So that's what was the impetus of Wealthy Servant. The desire to at least give you know folks like you and I the opportunity to have the option and actually do things by structure, not willy nilly. Most of the times we'll just, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll go right through it. We'll keep banging through it. And sometimes we get there, and sometimes we just have a lot of thorns and a lot of trauma, truthfully. And you asked about some of my losses. Man, I could go on, days about that.
which one sticks to you? Like, which one is like the one you're like,
Now,
man,
not because I'm glad
this
you
one.
brought this up. I'm now this funny. This is like full circle. So, um, almost 15 years ago, I took this course called Follow the Money, and it was a guy, John LaFear. He's the godfather of money laundering investigations, and I took it like, oh, I love this. I got really into it because I figured, hey, this old dog is not going to be able to go through the doors, on drug investigations forever. So this is where I'm going to always stay, useful. So I'm loving this, and you know, eventually we get closer and closer, and John and I actually kind of do a partnership. I end up doing a lot of coaching, a lot of teaching with him across the country and actually overseas. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, you know what? I got this great idea. This is well before Kajabi and all that. Hey, we're going to do it online. This is me trying to solve the problem all by myself. And so I tried to be the first Kajabi without asking other people, and who were already there. Spent nearly 50 grand um, for it to kind of flame out. 2 years later, Kajabi and all these other ones come to market, and so that stung. And then flash
Yeah.
forward,
I
I
mean,
now have bought him out this week, or this summer. I bought him out and his company. We're now building, that company up. So, but it's cool.
how, was that kind of like always on your radar? You're like, hey man, this didn't go through, but if I get the opportunity, man,
Yeah, that was his
I'm
desire
back at
too, and that
this.
was, yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was,
Oh, good.
yeah,
All
for
right,
sure.
cool, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you talk about just people kind of just
Mm.
banging their head against the wall until they get through it. But if we think about it in the terms of say just within law enforcement, right?
Right.
You go to an academy. Yeah, I've been to
Mm.
multiple academies, and the very best one I've ever been through was very heavy on
Okay.
marksmanship, and we had some of the
Yeah,
best instructors in the country, right? And Monty, we didn't pull the trigger with bullets in the gun for
I love that.
probably 3 weeks. This is no shit. But it was a process, right? It was a step by step. And when we started from your hands here, every move was scrutinized along the way until you had it down and you
Wow.
became efficient at it, right? And it's the same with things like defensive measures. Anyone who's done any fighting, they know like, hey, well, you got to learn the basics. You have to have this foundation before you can really start to get creative and do things. And if we think in that type of mindset, it makes a lot more sense than if we go into a business and try because I've done it. I know what it like. I started this podcast, a company called Killcliff,
Yeah.
which is an energy drink
Yeah.
company, speaking across the world, said, "Hey,
Yeah.
will you do a podcast for us?" It was me and my partner, and I knew jack and shit about a podcast, and I made
Mm.
so many mistakes. So, and I think this is where you get your inspiration from. Anytime anyone was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing a podcast," I'm like, "Let's talk. Let's talk." Because like
Right.
I've got I'm going to save you
Right.
so
Right.
much time and energy and just and
Yeah.
money and all of these different things. So I can see where your fiance would come to you and be like, "Hey, like, it's almost like a price of admission, right? You must have to
Yeah.
kind of pass
Yeah.
this
For
on."
sure. Absolutely. It was just funny. I didn't realize how much knowledge I had picked up, and to your point, you want to share it. You want to actually help because you can see them not struggling to do it, and it's just oftentimes just a little tweak, a change of frame, a change the way they see it, and then suddenly like, oh, I didn't realize we could do that, or oh, that makes everything different, and that is exactly it. The key first. It's not that they always say, well, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, and that's not where we start. We always start with your vision all the way up here. Most people,
Got to
yes, exactly.
reverse
Most
engineers.
people plan from the weeds on everything. But really, where do we want to go if we want to have a better, physical body? We need to envision where we really want to go and why are we doing it? Well, I just want to. No, that's not going to last. What do you? Why I want to have optimal health. Okay, then we execute differently. I want to have great. I want to have a fantastic financial I want to be financially secure, and I want to have five businesses, and I want them to run. Da, da, da. Where we want to go, that's where we plan from, because then we make decisions differently. If we just say, "Hey, I want to make $10,000," or "I'd be happy with," that's very common. We can't really plan from that. We think it's specific. It's not. That vision gives you the roadmap. From there, we can reverse engineer. I just was on a call today, and I kind of explained to the guy, hey, if you're retired and I'm retired, and you say, hey, let's drive. And I'm like, hey, I'm game. And we just drive west. And then we cross into Nevada. I'm like, looking at you. What are you doing, dude? As opposed to, hey, let's go to Caesar's Palace. Let's eat here. Let's,
Yeah.
do here. Let's go see this show. I'm like, great. Meet me at the airport. Buddy's got a jet. We'll fly there. That's the difference of having a crystal clear vision. And that's often what stops us is if we get stuck, that's been the thing that we're able to say, hey, is that in line with your vision? Or like, oh, no, it's not. But that's oftentimes what happens is when we start getting delayed and we're falling off our habits, our routine, it's because we are losing grip of our vision. You're not going to the gym anymore. Why? Because everything else, and we're not tied to that vision of what life would be like when we have the optimal health, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Those things feed on each other, right? If you don't have that North
Hmm.
Star that's always guiding you, those guiding principles and a vision, once things start not going as planned,
Right.
which they always will, you're right. Those are that's where it's very easy to punch out. It's very easy to find that path of least resistance, and next thing you know, you're right back
Right.
to where you are or were, I should say. This is going to be a two-part question because, and I don't even think we completely explained this. Really, what the wealthy servant, what you guys do is first
Hmm.
responders come to you, right, and they have so some type of plan on what they want to do as far as a second
Right.
and some other incomes coming in. What's the process from that point as far as
Yeah.
you know they come to you, they
Yeah,
say
it's a
this,
great question,
what's next?
right? So the phrase we always use, we slow down and go fast. Oftentimes, like
Yeah, I've heard you
you're
say
like, I want to make lots of money on and I want to get into real estate. Why? Because JT's in real estate, he makes lots of money, and I heard that's where all the money is. That
yeah,
literally happened to one of our guys, and I'm like, let's talk about your vision. We spend a lot of time on the vision. Let's slow down because when times get tough, like you said, this sucks. I'm not doing it. But when you're really tied to that vision and that is exactly what you want, man, you're out of bed. You're out of bed early. When you don't want to, you're still going to go. So we really get crystal clear with your vision, and that's for example, we had one of our folks, Ken McCrae, originally said, "Hey, I want to be in real estate," and after about a half an hour, no, I don't want to be in real estate. And what he wanted was to have a mobile cigar lounge. And so we helped him create a mobile cigar lounge. He retired April 12th. The next day, he was booked for the entire season. And now we're helping him raise capital
wow,
for his second and third unit. And next year, he'll franchise that business. But it took him,
that's
like, he was
fantastic.
very frustrated with himself. He's like, I just, but it took him to kind of really slow down, like about 3 weeks to really get crystal clear and stop grabbing things that weren't in line with what he really wanted. And that's what we often do. We can do anything. That's the problem. But what do you really want to do? And it's often not the same.
Yeah, yeah. You have to be clear what you want, and I've seen a lot of times other people chase
Hmm.
other people's dreams, right? Somebody makes it, somebody's doing well, and um, they're tricked into
Right.
thinking that that's what they want as well. But you mentioned doing things when you don't want to do them. Well, you got that. I mean, that has to be deep rooted inside you, and you
Right.
have to have that vision because you won't do that for other
Right.
people's dreams, right?
Right.
You'll
Right.
decide not to do it. So how this is the two part that I didn't even get to. First part is how do you get first responders who traditionally aren't vulnerable? How do you get them vulnerable enough to be
Yeah.
able to say, "Hey, you don't
Hmm.
know this, and that's okay." That's the first part, and then the second part: how do you how do you take that community and take the old version of me and get them to believe that this is an actual possibility? Like this doesn't have to be a pipe dream. You came to us with something, and this is there's a
Yeah.
mapping out process, and just like you learn to shoot, there's a process, and when the right processes are in place, then you really set yourself up for success in
It's a great
whatever it is in
question.
life.
You know, simply. we speak cop, we speak first responder, right? And so that was the thing, like, knowing that there was nobody that understood those insecurities, and we also understood ultimately they wanted that. But I also knew, because I had the same thing, I had the same journey of, many many years ago, doing it wrong. Even though I understood to create income, I didn't understand that I needed to continually learn. And not until I read Rich Dad Poor Dad did I start to kind of get it. So when they understand this is their safe place, this was created for them. We don't let other people in here. So this is the same as they're, back at the squad room, whether they're the fire station, they're allowed to be here. And by the way, as far as function, we actually make everybody sign an NDA, because they have a lot of amazing products in here. We have guys got that. We have at least three companies that will be in the next 3 years, $100 million in revenue. So, but
Wow.
they want that support. They want to be able to not only say, "Hey, I sucked," or "This didn't happen, this crashed and burned," or celebrate a win, or "This is what we're building. Here's all the insides and outsides." They want that. So initially, it's my job to say, "Hey, look, I sucked," but my absolute obsession was not sucking, and the freedom. You know what I mean? And that's what I
Yeah.
wanted, my freedom. So if that's really what you want, I just want your commitment. Then we can help you get there. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not. It's going to suck at times, and then all of a sudden, it's going to suddenly be a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And I just tell them, I'm like, look, I burned up $50,000. I burned up other, you know what I mean? Like, because I didn't set my ego aside, and I didn't know that there was a better way. I didn't know, to your point, that people had done what I wanted to do, and I could have tapped into that. Instead of, I've seen so many, like you could probably relate, where guys have tried, but it didn't work out. And what they learned was, this is not for me. Instead of, oh, I just did it wrong. I just didn't have the
Yeah.
playbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you think about where we come from, there's less than 1% of the population will ever strap on a gun and go through a door and do the things that we've ever done. We can do anything. But then we got to solve these problems. And oh, by the way, we have such a slim margin of error. Everybody else, I mean, doctors legitimately are allowed to kill people. And just say, hey, sorry,
Yeah.
that's what
Right.
happens. They legitimately are. Like, it's not a guarantee. Us, we live with that pressure. No, very few people, in the general population could rise to this. And we just have that negative self-talk that's telling us, you can only do this. This job means we do everything. I mean, we can literally do anything. And that's the way I reframed it, that there could be a day, I mean, especially, when my last, post with, GBI, as an agent. I mean, one day I could be working undercover. Next day I could be doing, complex money laundering. Next day I'm writing, Title threes. Next day I'm, following human trafficking. The next day, I'm over in Barcelona interviewing a confidential source for this, this case with DEA and FBI. I mean, so I saw nothing but possibilities. And I just had to go see the playbook. That's all. Nobody could do what we did unless, one, they had our heart, and we're just a different breed, and then they were trained. So I took it the other way. They're not like us. We have the advantage. I just need to go find the playbook.
Yeah, that's it. You
Yeah.
need to know the processes, because sometimes you could be in a job where it seems counterintuitive, right? Like, um, I don't know, you're an electrician and you
Mm,
decide you're going to flip houses. Something along the lines where, like, okay, I I know where my value is, and what I do actually adds. There's a direct connection between. I'm not going to have to
right.
pay for an electrician, right?
Right.
So where that's not as counterintuitive with the first responder community. Have there been have there been people have come to you? I'm sitting there. I'm sorry. for the record, I'm drinking an Athletic Brewing beer, right? It's a
Nice.
non-alcoholic beer company. And I've had on
Nice.
the co-founder, and he went over to 100 different investors trying to get somebody to sign on.
Wow.
And nobody out of the 100, none of them sign on. 101st, I don't know
Yeah.
if it's really
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
101st. Let's just for argument's sake. They're now the 26th fastest growing company
Yep.
in the world, which is insane. Have there been people that have come to you with these ideas where you've like, I really don't know, but because of who we are, I understand your vision. You end up taking it, and then like you're like, boy, I didn't see that coming. Like this thing is just going like,
JT, it seems like all of them. It's insane, and it is like I feel like a dope. Like some of this stuff, but I like boring businesses that are simple. So because I can wrap my head around. You got guys that Brandon Pullman. He's got Bravo Foxtrot. They are targeting and addressing human trafficking in a unique way. They've come up with a predictive analysis software. Additionally, they've created this amazing solution for CAD and RMS systems, and essentially, it supercharges the system where we gather all the intel from a stop from all the databases that are out there. It works with Flock. It can identify vehicles. It can it'll pull in facial recognition. It is an amazing system that they're getting, and he's able to talk IT and computer and also law enforcement. And I sit there like, yeah, I really need the dunce
yeah,
cap, but
yeah.
what these guys are creating is amazing. I mean, just a ton of great stuff. And we got one guy, Sean Kisley, he's created a wearable tourniquet. So it's just amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it's targeted for operators. He's a SWAT guy, the
Yeah, that
military,
makes
and
sense.
actually sports out in surfers. So he's always in talks with Billabong and all
Okay.
that. It just I could go on and on about these guys. They've got one, Michelle Hoover. She's creating this amazing platform and service for the elderly. She looked at this unique situation where they want to stay. And this is a combination of Angie's List and Angels, whatever that new company is, but where she's kind of combining these services and really, meeting the family's needs, just on and on and on and on. Oh, Jason Pearson, Smash Factor. Yeah, he's created a virtual golf company. I love his attitude. Him and Danny, his partner. Um, yeah, man, it's just crazy. It's just crazy, and you're just like, again, these companies are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. You can clearly see it. They've already got interest with franchise folks and all this. So
All right. So first responders listen to this. He or she's driving the ambulance, fire truck,
yeah,
police car, whatever it is. And then like, man, I've had this thing. I know that this thing is given the right chance, this
right,
thing is going to take off, but I have no idea of what it takes from me sitting here starting something, because that to most people that's one
yeah,
of the most daunting things. Like I
right,
don't even know if I can begin to getting it to getting that momentum,
right,
getting this thing going. Uh, what
yeah,
what's the process? How do they reach you? Is this by email?
yeah.
Is
It
this
could
just
just
go to the
go to
website?
the
What does
website
that
and
look like?
definitely can and I can be reached at on LinkedIn, Monty B, a wealthy servant. The website, thewealthyservant.com. Reach out to us. That's the thing right there is it will always come back to the vision. We always try to get into the nuts and bolts, and that's the hardest thing is to get people out. I mean, and that's the thing. The question you'll ask yourself: am I in the weeds? And how you can determine that is if this is a common thing. If I need leads, funding, um, customers. I'm talking about marketing. That's a common thing amongst all businesses. You're in the weeds. You're in the
Sure.
weeds. If that's what you're focused on, I just don't have the money. I'm just trying to figure out. I got to first figure out. Okay, you're in the weeds, bro. Get up here. Get up here because now talk about what you want to create. Oh, okay. I want to create this national brand. I want to create this athletic beer that's going to be, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be international. I'm going to have sponsors. I'm going to have The Rock drinking my stuff, and he's going to coach. From that vision, we start making decisions that way. And there's things that we don't do and things that we start looking and focusing on. And but that is the thing that people always want to go over first. And they're like, well, I got to really figure out how I can get this lined up and I can start. No, here, start with that vision, and then we're going to walk backwards. And that is absolutely the secret sauce. And then from there, we start doing, um, we're able to see. Now, some people just say, I want to have a great business. I'm here in Delaware. That's it. But it's going to be the very best. Okay, great. Going that to scale and building efficiencies aren't going to be hard at all. Or I have a national brand. I need to have my social media presence really optimized. I got to have a sales process, fulfillment, marketing, all this stuff has got to be succinct. We got to really know and have a plan. So, but it nothing starts with that clear vision. It's just you're just going to waste your time, and we won't even we won't even start. We'll just ask again. Is that in line with your vision? What's your vision look like? What is It seems kind
Mm.
of simplistic, but it truly actually gives you the roadmap. And then you start realizing that that's not my, and then this is my favorite phase. After owning these businesses, I what would happen time to time again? I actually owned some laundromats, and every once in a while, some people would get my phone number, and they would complain about, I don't know, an order, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you know, God love you, and I really appreciate you, using our services, but I hate to tell you, but that's not my job. Won't you're the owner? I'm like, yes, I am. That's not my job. I have a manager. I have a person that actually runs that. And let me give you their number, and because I'll be honest with you, I don't know. That's just not my job. I just own it. I cash the check. I don't, you know.
Yeah. I was doom scrolling one day, and there's a young guy. He looks like he's in his early 20s, and he just goes up to people that are
Yeah,
clearly doing
yeah,
well in life,
yep.
as far as
Consequence, or what is
as
it?
far as entrepreneurs, and he's
It's like, I don't know. Yeah, yeah,
whatever it is, right? So he goes up to this guy and he's like, and he asks him, "Have you ever been poor?" And um, how much money? What's the most you ever made? And um, within this conversation, the guy, I don't know, he said he owned
mm,
80 companies. It could have been 800. I
yeah,
mean, let's just go with 80, right? And this guy goes, "Well, how do you possibly run 80 companies?" He goes, "Well, I don't. I have
right,
processes put in place that got me to where I am. And I have people I trust under me that run the same processes, and under them it's kind of like a self-driving
right.
car at some point." And I thought that was really interesting, man, because it's
It's
almost like a
totally a
cheat
cheat code.
code
Yeah,
in a lot of
it
ways,
absolutely. Yeah,
right? Like you just
and
got like
that's
gotta
really,
know what you're doing.
as the owner, you shift from being the operator to the owner, and it's not your job. I mean, you'll hear this a lot. Well, I'm the only one who can do as well as I can. If you hear that, that's a problem. Yeah,
I've said
that's a
it. I've
problem.
said it.
Our job is to be great recruiters and great trainers. We just don't want to. We just don't want to let go, and we ask you to have a loose grip. And where do you really want to go? Because if you really want to scale, we can't. You can't do it. It's only one of you. You've got to recruit great talent,
Yeah.
if not at least as good, if not better than you, and then and just empower them. And not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. A lot of people don't. They're not built for it. I mean, this is a kick in the nuts. But not everybody wants to be a first responder. That's why we're so,
Yeah.
this
True.
is actually, if we could just get them to jump over that cavern and understand
Yeah.
you've already paid the price. It's just a little bit mind shift. That's
Yeah.
all we got to do. Tweak that a little bit. You've already done the hard stuff. People won't do 1/10 of the hard crap that you will do in your life, in your career. You've already, set. You've proven.
Yeah. I think And I think one of the challenges of those communities is just that is one, stepping the ego,
Mm,
take your ego out of it. Uh, and I was having a conversation with a guy named Brian
hmm
McNally, who's also an entrepreneur, and I was talking about not having a hard
mm,
time loosening the grip, right? Of because it and he goes, look, if you find somebody that does it 80% as good as you do,
yeah,
let him do it. He's like,
right,
because you don't have the time to
right,
do it. Let's be honest. You
right.
got other shit you got to be doing. And I was like, yeah, you are so right, man. Because you can only juggle so many, bowling pins or chainsaws or tennis ball, whatever it is, and then you're like,
Right.
I just can't do anymore. So that made a lot of sense to me. But Monty, is there anything we didn't cover here that you want to make sure that we
No,
hit?
I mean, no. My biggest thing is just that it's all about that it's possible. I want them to not hold on to it because that's crappy. It's I want you to step into it. Again, remember if you especially the first responders, if you've achieved that, you've achieved and proven, and that's the evidence that you can do something exceptional that very few can. The only thing different is just the training. That's it. The mindset we can shift, the training
Yeah.
we can give you. This is totally, dream big, man. Like this is all yours.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, listen, I feel like it's a good time to also mention that you and I were both teaching under
Yeah,
Mr. Gene Reed's training
yeah,
solutions. So I'm excited about
yeah,
that. I
yeah,
was
yeah,
excited to see you
yeah.
on the email chain there. Look, anyone hearing this, you got some ideas, you're a first responder, please reach out to Monty B. Hit him up on the website. You'll find that website in our show notes. Hit him up on Instagram, LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
see you're really active on there. And listen, I appreciate taking the time to do this. I know I screwed this up the first go around when we tried this.
No,
So thanks for
JT, thank you
giving
for
this a
doing this.
second.
I love this program, and thank you for what you're shepherding, and it is important, man. I know that you've saved people's lives, and that's the big thing that we always get people to do. I know that your mission has saved lives, so thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
brother.
you.